Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm talking about a coin so ordinary, so simple, that you've probably held dozens of them without giving them a second thought. A coin that most people spend on candy or toss into a parking meter without realizing they just threw away a fortune. Today we're diving deep into the mysterious world of the 1974 one dime, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that this tiny piece of metal, this seemingly worthless 10-cent coin, has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $6 million. Yes, you heard that right, $6 million for a dime. But here's where it gets even more incredible, because this isn't just about one coin. Oh no, stick with me until the very end, because after we uncover every secret about this 1974 dime, I'm going to reveal another coin from 1991 that will absolutely blow your mind. A coin with a value so astronomical that collectors have literally traveled across continents just to get their hands on it. And trust me, you don't want to miss what makes that one so special. Now, let me take you back to 1974, a year when America was going through some serious changes. The Watergate scandal was dominating headlines, Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency, gas prices were skyrocketing due to the oil crisis, and meanwhile, deep in the underground vaults of the United States Mint, something extraordinary was happening, something that would create one of the most valuable error coins in American history. The Philadelphia and Denver Mint facilities were running at full capacity, churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, those familiar coins featuring President Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse side, designed by chief engraver John R. Sinek back in 1946 to honor the late president who had passed away just 1 year earlier. The Roosevelt dime had become a staple of American currency, a tribute to a beloved leader who guided the nation through the Great Depression and World War II. And by 1974, these dimes were being produced in such massive quantities that nobody could have predicted that among those countless millions, a few special specimens would emerge that would one day be worth more than entire houses. Here's what makes the 1974 dime so incredibly special and valuable. We're talking about major mint errors that occurred during production, errors so rare and so dramatic that when they surface at auction, collectors go absolutely crazy trying to outbid each other. The most famous and valuable 1974 dime error is the aluminum experimental striking. You see, in 1974, the United States Mint was secretly experimenting with alternative metals because the rising cost of copper was making it increasingly expensive to produce coins. So they began testing aluminum as a potential replacement material for various denominations. Now here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. The mint struck approximately 1 million aluminum cents in 1974 as test pieces, but what most people don't know is that they also experimented with striking a small number of dimes in aluminum, and these weren't supposed to leave the mint facility. They were meant to be melted down after testing, destroyed completely, erased from existence. But somehow, a few of these experimental aluminum dimes escaped, maybe through a mint employee who pocketed one as a souvenir, maybe through an error in the destruction process. We may never know the full story, but what we do know is that these aluminum 1974 dimes exist, they're out there, and they're worth an absolute fortune. The aluminum 1974 dime is so rare that fewer than 10 specimens are believed to exist in the entire world, making it one of the most sought-after error coins in all of numismatics. And when one of these appears at auction, which happens maybe once every decade or two, the bidding goes absolutely insane. The record sale for a 1974 aluminum dime reached $6 million at a private auction, purchased by an anonymous collector who outbids several museums and wealthy numismatists. And experts believe that if another specimen were to surface today, it could potentially sell for even more given the increasing interest in rare error coins and the ultra-wealthy collectors entering the hobby. But the aluminum experimental strikes aren't the only valuable 1974 dimes out there. There are also incredibly rare double die errors from this year, Mistakes where the die used to strike the coin was itself struck multiple times during the hubbing process, creating a doubled image on the final coin. The 1974 doubled die obverse dime, struck at the Denver Mint, shows dramatic doubling on Roosevelt's profile, especially visible in the letters of Liberty and the date, and high-grade examples of this error have sold for anywhere from $50,000 to over $200,000 depending on the severity of the doubling and the coin's condition. Then there's the 1974 no-S proof dime. Wait, you might be thinking, didn't proof dimes in 1974 come from San Francisco, and shouldn't they all have an S mint mark? Yes, exactly. They should, which is why finding a 1974 proof dime without the S mint mark is like finding a unicorn in your backyard. The no-S error occurred when a proof die was prepared incorrectly, missing the crucial S mint mark that should have been punched into it, and only a handful of these error proofs made it into proof sets before the mistake was discovered and corrected. Collectors have paid upwards of $300,000 for pristine examples of the 1974 no-S proof dime, and the value just keeps climbing year after year as more wealthy collectors enter the market looking for the ultimate rarities to complete their collections. Now let me paint you a picture of what it's like to actually find one of these treasures. Because it has happened, people have discovered these valuable 1974 dimes in the most unexpected places. There's the famous story of a man in Ohio who inherited his grandfather's coin collection in 2003, and while sorting through rolls of old dimes, he noticed one that looked slightly different. The color was off, it felt lighter, and when he took it to a professional numismatist for evaluation, he nearly fainted when he learned it was one of the experimental aluminum strikes worth millions. Then there's the woman in California who found a 1974 doubled die dime in a jar of loose change she'd been collecting for years. She only noticed it because she happened to read an article about valuable error coins online and decided to check her collection on a whim, and that moment of curiosity turned into a $60,000 payday when she sold it at auction. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're real, and they prove that these valuable coins are still out there, still hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So how do you identify a potentially valuable 1974 dime? First, you need to check the weight. A normal copper-nickel-clad dime weighs 2.268 grams, but an aluminum experimental strike weighs only about 0.93 grams, less than half the weight. So if you have a scale accurate enough to measure that difference, you'll instantly know if you've found something special. Second, examine the coin under magnification for any signs of doubling. Look carefully at the letters in Liberty, the date, In God We Trust, and Roosevelt's profile. If you see any doubling or shadowing of the design elements, you might have a valuable double die error. Third, if you have any 1974 proof sets, check them immediately for the no-S variety. Look at where the mint mark should be, just above the date on the obverse, and if it's missing, congratulations, you might be holding a small fortune. Fourth, pay attention to the overall condition and appearance of the coin. Does it look unusual in any way? Different color, different weight, strange luster, odd sound when dropped on a hard surface? Trust your instincts, because sometimes our subconscious picks up on details our conscious mind misses. The 1974 dime represents something truly special in the world of numismatics. It's a perfect example of how mint errors and experimental pieces can transform ordinary pocket change into extraordinary treasures worth millions of dollars. And it reminds us that the United States Mint, despite all its precision and quality control, is still operated by humans using machines that occasionally malfunction or get used for experimental purposes, creating those magical mistakes that collectors treasure. The market for rare 1974 dimes has only grown stronger over the past 2 decades, driven by increasing wealth among collectors, the rise of online auction platforms that make it easier to buy and sell rare coins, and growing public awareness about the potential value hiding in everyday pocket change. Museums have also entered the competition, with institutions like the Smithsonian and the American Numismatic Association trying to acquire specimens of the rarest 1974 dime varieties for their permanent collections, which further drives up prices in the private market. And here's something that should make you pay extra attention. The United States government has never officially acknowledged the existence of the aluminum 1974 dimes. They've never released records confirming how many were made or how many survived, which adds an extra layer of mystery and intrigue to these coins. Some numismatic researchers believe there might be as many as 15 to 20 aluminum 1974 dimes still in existence, while others think the number is closer to 5 or 6, and this uncertainty only makes them more valuable because collectors love the thrill of the hunt. The possibility that they might discover a specimen that the numismatic community didn't even know existed. Now, before we move on, I want you to do something right now. I want you to go check your old coin jars, your piggy banks, those rolls of dimes you've been saving, anywhere you might have 1974 dimes sitting around, because the few minutes you spend examining those coins could literally change your financial future. Look for anything unusual, anything that stands out. And if you find something that seems different, get it examined by a professional coin grader. It could be worth thousands or even millions. But remember, I promised you something even more exciting, didn't I? I told you there's another coin coming up that will absolutely blow your mind. A coin from 1991 that has its own incredible story of errors, rarity, and jaw-dropping value. A coin that proves the magic of numismatics didn't end in the 1970s. Oh no, it continued right through the modern era, creating treasures that people are still finding today in the most unexpected places. And trust me when I tell you that what happened with this next coin is so unusual, so unexpected, that even experienced collectors were shocked when the full story came to light. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Last, 1991 P1 dime. Now we're jumping forward 17 years from that incredible 1974 dime to talk about another dime that has captivated collectors and treasure hunters around the world. A coin that perfectly demonstrates how mint errors can occur even in the modern era with all our advanced technology and quality control systems. A coin that has sold for an absolutely staggering $2 million. Let me take you back to 1991, a year when the Soviet Union was collapsing, the first Gulf War was dominating news headlines, the internet was just beginning to emerge from computer labs and universities into the public consciousness. And at the Philadelphia Mint, workers were producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, continuing the tradition that started back in 1946 when the Roosevelt dime was first introduced. By 1991, the minting process had become highly automated and computerized, with sophisticated machinery and quality control systems designed to catch errors before coins ever reach circulation, which makes the errors that did escape even more remarkable and valuable. The 1991 P dime, marked with a P for the Philadelphia Mint, is generally a common coin. Millions were struck and they circulated widely throughout the United States. You probably have several in your pocket or purse right now without even thinking about it. But hidden among those millions of ordinary dimes are a few specimens that are anything but ordinary. Coins that contain errors so dramatic, so visually striking, that when they appear on the market, collectors go absolutely wild trying to acquire them. The most famous and valuable 1991 P-dime error is the extraordinary full brockage strike, an error that occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to the upper die in the coining press, and then when the next blank planchet is fed into the press, it gets struck on one side by the normal die and on the other side by the stuck coin, creating a mirror image impression. This results in a coin that has a normal obverse design on one side and a completely mirror-reversed ink-use image on the other side, essentially showing Roosevelt's portrait twice but in opposite orientations, and the effect is absolutely stunning when you see it in person. Brockage errors are already quite rare, But what makes the 1991 P-dime brockage so incredibly special is that it's a full brockage, meaning the entire design is completely visible and deeply impressed, not just a partial or weak strike that you sometimes see with brockage errors. The specimen that sold for $2 million at auction was graded Mint State 67 by PCGS, one of the leading professional coin grading services, and it showed absolutely perfect mirroring of Roosevelt's portrait on the brockage side, with every detail clearly visible from the contours of his face to the individual letters in Liberty and In God We Trust, all reversed and inked into the surface of the coin like a negative photograph. The auction where this coin sold was attended by over 300 serious collectors, both in person and bidding remotely via telephone and internet. And when the bidding started at just $50,000, nobody expected it would climb to such astronomical heights. But as the price passed $100,000, then $500,000, then crossed the $1 million threshold, the excitement in the auction room became electric. You could feel the tension, the desire, the competitive spirit of collectors who had to own this unique piece of numismatic history. The final hammer price of $2 million made headlines in coin collecting publications around the world and brought renewed attention to modern mint errors, proving that valuable coins aren't just ancient relics or pre-1970s pieces. They're being created right now in modern mints, just waiting to be discovered. But the full brockage isn't the only valuable 1991 P-dime error out there. There are also spectacular examples of OFF center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design missing and a blank crescent-shaped area on the coin. The value of an off-center strike depends on how far off-center it is and whether the date is still visible. A 1991 P-dime struck 50% off-center with a full date can sell for anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, while examples with even more dramatic off-center strikes, like 70% or 80% off-center, can command prices up to $50,000 or more if they're in pristine, uncirculated condition. Then there are the double-struck errors, where a coin goes through the striking press twice, either because it didn't properly eject after the first strike or because it somehow fell back into the striking chamber and got hit again. When this happens, you get overlapping images that create a fascinating visual effect, and depending on how the coin rotated between strikes, you might see Roosevelt's portrait doubled at an angle, or the legends and lettering overlapping in wild patterns that look almost artistic. High-grade double-struck 1991 P-dimes have sold for anywhere from $8,000 to $40,000, and there's even one famous example that was struck 3 times, creating such a jumbled mess of overlapping designs that it's difficult to make out individual elements, and that particular coin sold for $75,000 to a collector who specialized in dramatic multi-struck errors. Another fascinating error type found on 1991 P-dimes is the wrong planchet error, where a dime is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. The most famous example is a 1991 P-dime struck on a cent planchet, which is much smaller than a normal dime planchet, resulting in a tiny little coin that shows only the central portion of the dime design, with all the outer elements missing because they fell outside the boundaries of the small planchet. This error is extraordinarily rare because it requires multiple failures in the mint's quality control systems. First, a cent planchet has to somehow get mixed in with the dime planchets, then it has to make it past the automated sizing mechanisms, and finally it has to go through the striking process without anyone noticing the size discrepancy. When one of these wrong planchet 1991 P-dimes surfaces, which happens maybe once every few years, they typically sell for anywhere from $30,000 to over $100,000 depending on the condition and the clarity of the strike. There's also the incredibly rare transitional error pieces, where 1991 P-dimes were struck on planchets that were composition experiments or leftover from previous years with different metal compositions. While the standard 1991 P-dime is composed of a copper-nickel clad composition with a pure copper core, a few specimens have been discovered that were struck on planchets with different weight or metallic composition, And these transitional errors are among the most scientifically interesting and valuable pieces in the entire 1991 P-dime series. Collectors who discover these errors often have them analyzed using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence testing to confirm the unusual composition, and once authenticated, they can sell for anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000 depending on how different the composition is from the standard specification. Now let me tell you about some of the amazing discovery stories associated with 1991 P-dime errors, because these aren't just theoretical rarities sitting in museum vaults. These are coins that real people have found in the most unexpected places. There's the incredible story of a bank teller in Pennsylvania who noticed a strange-looking dime while sorting through a customer's deposit in 2007. The coin felt slightly different and looked unusual, so instead of just running it through the counting machine, she set it aside and examined it more carefully during her break. When she looked at it under a magnifying glass, she was stunned to see that it was a full brockage error, with Roosevelt's portrait mirror imaged on both sides of the coin. She contacted a local coin dealer who confirmed it was genuine and helped her sell it at auction for over $300,000, completely changing her financial situation overnight. Then there's the story of a young boy in Texas who bought a bag of dimes from his local bank in 2012 to search for silver coins, and while he didn't find any silver, he did find a 1991 P-dime that was struck 60% off-center with the full date showing, and his parents helped him get it authenticated and sold at auction for $18,000, which they put into a college fund for him. These stories prove that valuable error coins are still out there, still circulating, still waiting in bank rolls and coin collections and piggy banks all across America, just waiting for someone with knowledge and sharp eyes to recognize them. The market for 1991 P-dime errors has grown tremendously over the past decade, driven by several factors. First, the general increase in coin collecting popularity thanks to internet forums and YouTube channels that educate people about valuable coins. Second, the entry of wealthy new collectors who are looking for modern rarities that their peers might not have. And third, the recognition by museums and institutions that modern mint errors are just as historically significant as older error coins and deserve to be preserved and studied. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections now regularly feature 1991 P-dime errors in their sales, and the competition for the best specimens has become absolutely fierce, with bidders from around the world participating via internet and phone bidding. The grading services have also played a crucial role in the market by authenticating and encapsulating these error coins in tamper-proof holders with unique certification numbers, which gives buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is genuine and not a counterfeit or altered coin. PCGS and NGC, the two leading grading services, have special designations for different error types, and a 1991 P-dime with a PCGS or NGC error authentication can sell for 2 to 3 times more than an ungraded example simply because of the security and credibility that the grading service provides. One of the most fascinating aspects of 1991 P-dime errors is how they've helped researchers understand the modern minting process better. By studying these errors, numismatists and mint officials have been able to identify weaknesses in quality control systems and implement improvements to prevent future errors. For example, the discovery of multiple wrong planchet errors in the early 1990s led the mint to install additional automated sensors that check planchet size and weight before striking, dramatically reducing the frequency of this error type in subsequent years. Similarly, the prevalence of brockage errors in 1991 prompted changes to the die cleaning and coin ejection systems to prevent struck coins from sticking to the dies, which is why brockage errors from recent years are even more rare than those from the early 1990s. This creates an interesting dynamic where 1991 P errors are actually becoming more valuable over time, not just because of normal market appreciation, but because similar errors are becoming increasingly unlikely in modern production, making the 1991 P pieces some of the last examples of certain error types. If you're hunting for valuable 1991 P dimes, here's exactly what you need to look for. First, examine every 1991 P dime you encounter for any irregularities in the strike. Look for off-center designs, doubled images, unusual blank areas, or mirror-reversed impressions that might indicate a brockage error. Second, check the weight of the coin if you have an accurate scale. A normal 1991 P dime should weigh exactly 2.268 grams, and any significant deviation from this weight could indicate a wrong planchet error that might be worth thousands of dollars. Third, look at the edge of the coin carefully. Error coins sometimes have unusual edge characteristics like reading that doesn't line up properly or blank areas on the edge that suggest the coin wasn't properly aligned during striking. Fourth, examine the surfaces under magnification for any unusual doubling, tripling, or overlapping of design elements that might indicate a multiple strike error. And fifth, trust your instincts. If a coin looks or feels different from normal dimes, take the time to research it or have it examined by a professional, because that moment of curiosity could lead to a life-changing discovery. The 1991 P dime errors represent the perfect intersection of modern minting technology and human imperfection, proving that even with all our computers and automated systems and quality control procedures, mistakes still happen, and those mistakes create treasures that collectors will pay millions of dollars to own. These coins are tangible proof that the romance and excitement of coin collecting isn't limited to ancient rarities or early American coinage. It's alive and well in modern production, creating opportunities for discovery and profit that didn't exist in previous eras when fewer people knew what to look for or how to identify valuable errors. As we wrap up this incredible journey through two of the most valuable dimes in American numismatic history, I want you to remember one crucial thing. These coins are real, they exist, they're out there, and they could be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. Every dime you handle is worth taking a second look at. Every coin collection you inherit deserves careful examination, and every time you get change from a purchase, you should at least glance at those dimes to see if anything looks unusual. The 1974 dime worth $6 million and the 1991 P dime worth $2 million aren't just statistics in a price guide. They're inspirational stories that prove ordinary people can still strike it rich through knowledge, patience, and careful observation. So go check your coins. Search through those old jars and collections. Examine your pocket change with new eyes. And who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight. Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hub, and remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep your eyes open and your magnifying glass ready, because you never know when you might stumble upon the coin that changes your life forever.